We will now begin the Copyright Office's 8th Copyright Modernization webinar. During the program, attendees may submit questions using the Q&A panel on the right side of the WebEx screen. You might have to expand the panel by clicking on the arrow next to where the label Q&A appears. First, please welcome the Director of the Copyright Modernization Office, Ricardo Farraj.
Thank you, Ananda. Hello, everyone. I am glad to spend time with you today as the Office of the Chief Information Officer, User Experience Design Team, talks to you about their work at the library and throughout copyright modernization. User experience design supports the practice of designing products and services with an emphasis placed on the quality of the user experience. This includes human factors, interaction design, web development, and visual design. To that end, the User Experience Design Team activities are focused on the needs of the full range of users, both internal and external, that are engaged with the work of copyright. Before we begin talking with Natalie Smith, the Chief of Design, I also like to take this time to address the COVID-19 pandemic. The library and the Copyright Office priorities the health and the well-being of staff and the public. As such, the modernization team is currently working remotely to continue supporting modernization development, planning, and progress. As always, we are available to you. Be sure to monitor copyright.gov during this time for modernization updates. If you have additional questions or concerns, you can reach out to us at askcmo@copyright.gov. Thank you.
Thank you, Ricardo. At this time, we would like to introduce Natalie Buda-Smith, who is the IT Division Chief in the Library's Office of the Chief Information Officer. Natalie, could you please explain what is user experience design?
Thanks, sure will, happy to. User experience design focuses on the users of a website or application. We drill into questions like, what do users need to get the job done with the least amount of roadblocks? How do we make the system easy to use? User experience design combines these user needs with business needs and a deep understanding of technology to design easy-to-use and accessible online experiences. In copyright modernization, our teams use the agile design and development methods. The roles in those teams include at least product owners, developers, quality assurance testers, and user experience designers. User experience designers represent the needs and wants of actual users in the team. We work with actual users and stakeholders by conducting user research and using best practices. The user experience team will dive more into the detail of what we do on copyright modernization following my comments, but in general, user experience designers interact with actual users through user research such as card sorting, contextual inquiry, and usability testing. We then synthesize user needs with business needs and a deep understanding of that technology to create experiences and communicate ideas and designs through journey maps, wireframes, visual design, design systems, front-end code, and more.
The next question will be for user experience designers Wesley Lindemood and Doug League. Wes and Doug, can you say a little bit about the user experience design team and your backgrounds?
Sure. This is Wes. I can go first. The User Experience Design Team at the Library of Congress is a professionally diverse team with backgrounds in library science, publishing, science and technology, to name just a few backgrounds. As user experience designers, we work to make sure the products and services that the library provides are useful, usable, and desirable to the people they're designed to serve. User experience is a broad term that includes many subdisciplines, including content strategy, information architecture, interaction design, and visual design. Skills that cut across all of these subdisciplines are the ability to foster collaboration and cultivate empathy. The design process we use is built upon first understanding and then serving the needs of others. And the methods we use are designed to help cross-functional teams build shared understanding of how to prioritize user needs in the creation of successful products. I'm a designer that loves to think about systems, and I gravitate to the parts of user experience design that deal with higher level strategy and the organization of information. And user experience design has provided me with the opportunity to work with a lot of different products and services. I've had the privilege to apply my skills to the design of stories, interactive documentaries, and platforms at news organizations, including NPR and USA Today. I've worked on the design of museum experiences at the United States Holocaust Memorial Museum, and having worked with photographers, filmmakers, writers, editors, musicians, and other creators, I'm now excited to be part of the effort to improve the registration process. Thanks.
Thanks, Wes. This is Doug League. I've been working in the field for over 20 years. Much like Wes, I've worked in a variety of verticals, including finance, education, biotechnology, entertainment, and precision medicine. I've done work for NASA, Johns Hopkins, Lake Mason, NIH, and Pfizer, to name a few. I originally entered the field with a graphic design background. I've always loved design, but I began to see the limitations of design based solely on aesthetic merits for interactive systems. I wanted to design things that people would use, things that serve some kind of purpose. To do that, I realized the work I created had to be functional, usable, and accessible. Our team works to create entire experiences for the people who use our products. Empathy drives what we do, and that in itself is incredibly powerful. Thank you.
Thank you, Doug. Natalie, why are we using user experience design for copyright modernization?
Copyright modernization is a very large endeavor with complex business processes. For example, submitting a claim for registration engages almost all parts of the Copyright Office. Having a team focused on user experience design is the best practice for systems of this size and importance, as user experience designers focus on reducing the complexity for users. And through the development of a design system, we promote the use of patterns and similar elements for consistency, so that if a user submits a claim for registration, then transfers the record, they're using the same experience. This makes it easier to engage with the Copyright Office, and you do not have to learn different systems for different types of requests. Since many users are individuals submitting a claim for copyright, our user experience designers aim to make the websites and applications easy to use, accessible, and understandable. Our goal is for you to feel confident that your works are correctly submitted and happy to complete your task.
The next question will go to user experience designer Carlos Alvarado. Carlos, could you please tell us how the user experience design can help improve current Copyright Office systems?
Sure, thank you. Early on during the copyright modernization effort, the UX team knew that we had to focus on delivering an application that served the needs of a broad base of users. It was, and of course still is, important to develop a system that allows both first-time and experienced users to register a work, record a document, or search for a copyright record easily and intuitively. To do this, we had to implement a user-driven approach to our design and development strategy, which of course meant that we had to engage with both internal and external users throughout the process, so we can iterate and improve upon our initial assumptions. For the copyright public record system, or the public catalog, there are a number of things that user experience design can do to elevate the experience the users have as they maneuver through the application. I'll briefly touch on two critical aspects to any successful user-centered project: hierarchy and consistency. So, for hierarchy, when designing an application with complex information like the public record system, developing a strong information architecture is really the backbone to the success of the project. How we group and display data can really help translate information into knowledge for our end users. So as a quick example, the current system displays information about a record within a detailed records page in a long list. We found through multiple conversations with the users that this list seemed to be ordered arbitrarily. To resolve this issue, we utilize a common UX exercise called card sorting. In these sessions, we ask subject matter experts to group each record label for each specific record type, registration, and recordation, and begin creating groups. This really allowed us to understand the mental models of some of our primary users and push the design of the application forward. So on this next slide, we can see how the results of the card sort translate into actionable design decisions. By grouping related content together, we allowed users to find what they were looking for quickly and make the detailed record page just easier to read. Now, when it comes to consistency, we really have to understand that these types of design changes can happen quickly and consistently because of our use of a new design system for the copyright modernization project. A design system is really your one source of truth when it comes to developing multiple related platforms with the use of a component library, which can contain everything from your page layout to how a button appears on the screen to colors and font. As you can see here, we have some basic elements of the design system on display. Trust is a really big part of user satisfaction, and trust is really built through consistency. By having a cohesive set of applications tied together, in part by a well-formulated design system, it really allows us to remain adaptable to changing requirements while maintaining a trusted look and feel. It's really through this careful development and implementation of our design system that we're going to be able to foster a higher level of confidence from our users. So really, at the end of the day, not only will the look and feel remain consistent, but our design system will help users complete their tasks quickly and accurately. Thank you.
Natalie, could you tell us about the processes that are being used?
Sure thing. User experience designers are part of the Agile Scrum team during design and development. A user experience designer is working with experts in the Copyright Office and developers in day-to-day activities, discussing the best way to design and develop features. We start with user research, such as identifying obstacles in the current processes and directly interacting with users to find out ways to make the system easier for them. We then bring this information back to the team and communicate the new ideas with tools such as wireframes that show ideas for the screens and user flows that show how the screen should be put together in a specific order to make it easier to use. With the new designs or wireframes, we often test screens with users through usability testing, sharing the screens with actual users and getting feedback as they try to complete a task. We also conduct usability testing with the new features after they've been developed and released, so that we can conduct usability testing on the actual working website or application. This gives the team exact feedback so that we can make continuous iterative improvements rather than releasing an entire new system and hoping that it is easy to use.
The next question will go to David Neal, Head User Experience Designer. David, how is designing the user experience for copyright different from designing other websites or digital products?
This is Natalie again. One of the biggest differences is that we have the challenge of presenting complex position-based forms to users so that they are understandable and meaningful to their situation. Our approach has been to understand and gather technical requirements for their particular situation and use that information to create a visual journey map. Once that is determined and understood, the user experience design team can then use a design system component or components of the design system as building blocks to provide the user with a straightforward and consistent interface so they feel confident throughout the process.
Thanks, Natalie. This is Doug League, and I'd like to add one of the things we discovered is we're really realizing the benefit of using a design system. Although our system deals with copyright law, it touches many different business units throughout the library. In order to capture the functionality correctly, we need to have very detailed conversations with representatives of these business groups. Using a design system provides us with a base set of UI components to work from. As a result, we could rapidly create visuals to help provide potential solutions to feature requirements. Then iterate quickly to come up with a final interface that was technically feasible and solve the business need. Thank you.
Thanks for that, Doug. This is Carlos. I think one of the main differences when designing a system like the public record system is that you have to recognize there's going to be a learning curve for some users. Making copyright terminology easy to comprehend for a wide audience can be challenging, but implementing UX best practices like a clear hierarchy and making informed design decisions based on user input, I think gives us a really great path forward. It's also critical to help develop an in-depth help feature that helps the users walk through the search process or help identify unfamiliar terms.
Thanks for that, Carlos. This is Wes, and I can talk about registration. There are a few ways that designing the user experience for the registration system is different from what folks might be familiar with in the design of banking or shopping websites. A major difference is the connected nature of copyright law and the registration application. Copyright law determines the information we're required to gather, which influences how we need to approach the application. The Copyright Office can't offer legal advice to applicants, but what we can do is design a system that offers help and guidance in the application and make the design of the experience as straightforward as possible while still meeting the requirements of the law. To address applicant frustrations with uncertainty about application questions, we're taking a holistic approach to finding solutions. While we focus on the design of the application, the Copyright Office team is studying regulatory issues and getting feedback from the public through the use of a notice of inquiry in the Federal Register. To make the registration, this makes the registration process pretty unique because we're exploring technical solutions, but where it makes sense to consider regulatory changes, the Copyright Office is exploring that in parallel with our design efforts. For that reason, we need to take into account that the form that we build will need to be built in a flexible way with the ability to modify it over time to conform to new regulations and changes to the law. In addition to potential changes to the law, the registration system we build needs to accommodate a wide variety of registration scenarios. The information collected could be simple or complex, and the user that's filling out the application could be unfamiliar with copyright law or an expert. So we must be able to flexibly accommodate many different needs. Another example of a difference is that paying to register a copyright claim works differently than paying for a product on a shopping site. When you pay for a product on a shopping site, you've purchased a product and completed your transaction. When you register a copyright claim, you're paying a filing fee to pay for services required to review a copyright claim. Examination includes both review of the application form and the examination copy submitted. The registration system that we build needs to make it clear to applicants what all the steps in the process are and where they're at in that process. Thank you.
Doug and David, what have you learned throughout this process? Were there any surprises?
Sure. One of the things that we discovered was that constant collaboration was key to really being able to understand the product needs. We had an incredibly knowledgeable product owner help drive the process of gathering business requirements and understanding feature needs. Our collaboration sessions included UX, business analysts, members of the development team, and accessibility experts. So as we would review and discuss features, we could tackle them holistically. Our feature discussions would not only address the UX, but also talk through how it would be developed and what accessibility issues we would need to be aware of while designing for the feature.
Thanks, Doug. Hopefully you guys can hear me now. So on the internal side, there were really no big surprises, but we did gain greater empathy for staff as they had to interact with a diverse set of users in a variety of unique situations. By using common interface elements from the design system for both the public and internal users, we make it possible for the copyright staff to see what the user sees in real time, enabling them to better understand their needs. By considering them together, we're able to create an internal process that integrates with and improves the external customer experience.
Carlos and David, based on the data from user research prototypes and initial releases, can you say anything about how the user experience will change?
Sure, thank you. Now, as part of the user experience design process, we consistently go through phases of research, design, prototyping, testing, and evaluation to make iterative improvements that will create a system that caters to a wide set of user needs. In short, the more we learn about our users, the more the system will fit their needs and workflow. So as an example, the search behavior for some of our users of the public record system can be quite different as compared to users performing searches on a retail site or other platforms. We discovered during conversations with researchers and through contextual inquiries where we saw researchers go through their workflow for finding a record or a set of records, that these search strategies can vary significantly. Our initial assumption was that researchers wanted a narrow set of search results in order to find that so-called needle in a haystack, that one record or that one set of records. What we actually learned was that researchers typically want to cast a wider net when it comes to their initial search results. So searching for John Smith Jr. may leave out important critical results for John Smith, Jr., because the same individual may potentially spell their name differently on multiple records. To adapt to this, we knew we had to ask developers to ensure that the code on the back end delivered search results that catered to multiple search strategies, and not solely to a needle in a haystack approach, which is typical of a lot of other search-based sites. It also confirmed our assumption that while users may want to cast a wide net, they still want to be able to easily narrow the scope of their search results. So on the next slide, that's why the new system will incorporate modern search components like filtering by record types and classes, a date picker, and a date range selection tool, as well as advanced search features where users can build queries applying search findings like this. Allows us to make iterative changes and improvements as we continue to build an application that improves the user's experience by making goals more intuitive and easier to complete.
Thanks, Carlos. I think we'll keep it on this slide since this addresses user testing. This is David, by the way. User feedback and periodic formal testing is baked into our UX process, and it's an ongoing and long-term approach for both UX and development. Findings are reviewed, prioritized, and then implemented in the Agile development process, ultimately being added to the public portal in release cycles. This approach gives public users a voice in the process, while identifying and prioritizing customer needs and ultimately allowing the UX team to deliver iterative and continuous improvements. Thank you.
Wes, how will any of this affect me if I go to copyright.gov, for example, to register a work?
So the Copyright Office intends to replace the current electronic system known as ECO with a modern solution that meets the changing needs of individual creators, industry, including on the user side, copyright practitioners, and the general public. To research user needs for that modern solution, the office has engaged stakeholders in outreach efforts with the assistance of a third-party contractor. The contractor interviewed numerous examiners, supervisors, and managers from the office's registration program to identify common problems faced by applicants and the office. External user interviews have been conducted in Washington, D.C., New York City, Nashville, and Los Angeles with companies, organizations, lawyers, and individual creators who engage with the copyright registration system. In addition, the office has analyzed ECO survey data, as well as calls received by the Public Information Office and ECO Help Desk, which included over 10,000 responses from individual applicants. Based on the information gathered during these outreach efforts, the office is planning to develop several solutions to improve the registration system. Two important improvements that we're working on include integrated help throughout the registration process and notifications to better track application progress. In regard to integrated help, we're working on multi-tiered support options that offer basic, intermediate, or in-depth support based on user experience level. From contextual help in the application to questionnaires, improving existing FAQs, adding video tutorials, we're thinking about support in multiple contexts and in multiple ways. To make tracking an existing application easier, we're working on the design of a dashboard that will provide applicants with a clear view of the status of an application and a notification system to alert applicants to updates in the process and any actions that need to be taken. Thanks.
Thank you, Wes. Natalie, would you like to offer any concluding thoughts?
Sure thing. As the team so nicely illustrated, user experience design is being used in copyright modernization. Since it is a very large endeavor with complex business processes, having a team focused on user experience design is a best practice for systems of this size and importance. And as user experience designers focus on reducing the complexity for users, it really helps making the system easier to use. We continue to engage with users to get feedback, and we'll continue to do that for the remaining time that copyright has online systems so that we can continuously improve the online services to meet your needs.
Thank you, Natalie. Before we start the Q&A portion of the program, we would like to conduct a short poll. Please let us know how many people you have watching this webinar from your location. 1 person, 2 to 4 people, 5 to 7, 8 to 10, or more than 10. We will now begin the question and answer portion of the program. Attendees can submit questions using the Q&A panel on the right side of the WebEx screen. You might have to expand the panel by clicking on the arrow next to where the label Q&A appears. First question is for Ricardo. Ricardo, what is the difference between user design and public outreach?
Thank you, Ananda. So user design, as Natalie and her team explained, it is more about the look and feel, about the experience of the customer when they interact with that application, is to make sure that the flow and the interaction from the customer to the application is very fluid and it makes sense. Outreach for us is when we meet with the customers, when we talk, get feedback from the customers, and from that feedback, we can create user stories that can actually feed to those user stories that Natalie's team is using. So they're interrelated, but separate, because there's a lot of user stories or suggestions that come from the customers. There is more than the look and feel. It's more about how the system internally is going to work, or how it's going to affect them, or how it's going to affect their workforce when they use it. I hope that answers the question.
Thank you, Ricardo. This question for Natalie and her team: is there a way to assess user experience and customer experience success through metrics which tie back to the Copyright Office's mission?
Both for direct use within the product Scrum teams, and we do track metrics to make sure that they align with the metrics for copyright as a whole. So we do have an entire, and Ricardo and the team could speak more to this, and I believe they've already spoken this at another webinar. There's a whole data team focused on making sure that metrics are being collected and that they are mapped to the mission. But we also use tools like Adobe Analytics to track what's working, what's not, and help us identify obstacles. So we do use a very holistic approach to gathering user feedback, and it is through actual responses from users, through usability testing, through other research methodologies, but we also use metrics as well to complete that picture, because behavior within the applications themselves is important. So metric is important to the entire program.
So let's move on to the next question for the user design team, the user experience team. What role do COTS products have in this process?
Hi, this is Natalie, and I can take that one. So the question was about a COTS product to power the CRM application. So I'd like to say that we're currently in design and development for a lot of these services, and we are actually conducting are using a lot of custom development. We found that user needs and the business needs really led us to the path of designing and developing a custom solution. So we are bringing in COTS products where they are appropriate for specific types of services that are shared across all the online services. But right now, there is no COTS CRM application that has been deployed across all the online services.
Thank you, Natalie. Can you tell us a little about the timing of the implementation of the new interface?
One way to answer that is talking about our design system. So we have implemented a design system that is being shared across all product teams. The Copyright Office was very proud to release Recordation recently, which is using a version of the design system, and we're working on other online services to be released through the end of this year, and that's where you'll start to see more of the user experience design that we've been talking about today.
Okay, that's the last question we have. So that will conclude today's webinar. When you sign out of the session, we encourage you to take part in a brief survey regarding your experience. We use this to improve our webinar programs, so your feedback is greatly appreciated. Thank you for your participation today, and please join us for the next webinar.